Welcome back to our buyers series. We are talking today a little bit more about the process of buying a home, specifically about the home inspection process and appraisal and what that means for you. So we're here today with Andy Prasky, the leader of the preferred home team with RE/MAX Advantage Plus, Abby Tomassoni. Abby, I said it wrong again, didn't I?
Nope, you said it right.
Oh, perfect. Who is also with the preferred home team with RE/MAX Advantage Plus. And we're joined by Davis Arcoren, who is with the preferred home team with RE/MAX Advantage Plus, but also owns Diligent Home Inspections and is a certified home inspector. Welcome, guys.
Well, thanks for having us.
So, Andy, why don't you just give us like a 10-second overview of, of your team and what you do?
Well, I love bragging about my family. Preferred Home Team .com is the group. So we're at RE/MAX Advantage Plus Preferred Home Team. So some people don't understand how that works. You have a broker, which is RE/MAX, and then we have an individual team where there's a bunch of us that collaborate together. We work together, share information. So when you hire one of us, you basically get 12 of us in a good way, right? So we have marketing team, we have buyers agents, we have selling agents. We've got guys like Davis here that are home inspectors that actually own their own home inspection company. So we have resources that are kind of fun to share. And then we get the youthfulness and the detail-oriented Abby next to me over here. When you go out there for a buyer, there's a lot of work for buyers agents. And a lot of times buyers agents, as they go through their careers, they lose that love for details. And so that's one of the things that I really admire about Abby is her detail orientedness and being able to figure things out for the customers. And even for me, sometimes when we're doing projects together, we'll sit down and actually go through the details where I literally glaze over and start looking at the squirrels out the window. And Abby dives right in and says, here's where we're at, And so that's why I think it's important when you look at teams as a consumer. Why are there these teams? Why is there, if I had an ego, it'd be the Andy Prasky team. Zero ego. I don't even care. Call Abby, call Davis. That's why we're here. We're here to help, right? You have something that will draw you to somebody on the team. We want you to work with them, but they get to tap into all the experience that all of us provide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And
Okay.
I think that's a good representation of how the three of you work together. So my question is, at what point of the process of buying a home does the home inspection happen?
Typically, once you have an accepted offer, it's written into the contract. So you have a specific amount of time, whether it's contingent to the inspection, which means you can cancel should something come on the inspection, or more recently, I've been seeing a lot of non-contingent home inspections where they still want to know about the property, but they're confident enough that whatever it is, they're going to take care of it. So, and now they're coming back around to where more items are being negotiated as far as repairs and things now. So it's turning more into a buyer's market again, where during a home inspection, you're able to negotiate some repairs.
Because during the height of the market, a lot of people were passing on home inspections, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people were saying, waive the inspection. Thankfully, I worked with a lot of clients still who didn't waive the inspection. They just made it non-contingent. So they still were able to go through the process and at least have a honey-do list of things that need to be completed, regular maintenance, or maybe some urgent safety issues to take care of right away.
Okay.
Courtney asked me, why as a listing agent I like inspections.
Why do you like inspections, Andy?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Courtney. No, honestly, as a listing agent for my sellers, a lot of my sellers that, especially empty nesters or I'm moving on with life kind of families, right? Whatever event happened in life and they want to move on, they don't want to have that baggage behind them. So they completely disclose everything on the disclosures. And then you give that buyer every opportunity in the world to challenge what you have in your disclosure statement and research even farther. So then they can look at that house, they can go through it, they know exactly what they're buying. Insurance companies now, I can't even emphasize this enough, how important it is to order your insurance binder early in the process, because they find a lot of mysteries that, hey, there was a claim against this water claim in 2006. Well, then they have the ability to ask those questions. So a lot of times I'm even encouraging people to order the insurance binder early now, so that if there was anything that pops up, it happens early, so we have time to adjust. But the key thing as a listing agent is to get those people moved on free and clear and have no, nothing behind them. They can move on and enjoy life and not have to worry about anything coming back to haunt them. Like, oh yeah, I forgot to pull a permit on the basement and the basement lit on fire. Or, you name the item, right? Happens, but think about that. If you finished your basement, did your own wiring, and you didn't tell anybody that you did your own wiring, you didn't pull the permits, and nobody, insurance didn't catch it, the home inspector didn't catch any of that stuff, you didn't do any due diligence, and then all of a sudden that wiring that was incorrectly put in there sparks a fire and lights. I got to be honest with you, you're going to get a call from an attorney telling you that you're responsible for that fire. And so people thinking that they're getting away with stuff, you're not getting away with anything. You're better off completely disclosing, saying, hey, I didn't pull a permit. Do your own homework on this house because I didn't pull permits. And most people can do enough homework then to make that still an okay decision, just so you know.
Abby, what is the difference between a home inspection and an appraisal? I think that's where a lot of people get hung up.
That is a very common mistaken topic. So home inspection is your due diligence as a buyer to make sure you are satisfied with the way the house is, the structure, anything that may or may not be wrong. Again, asking the seller to maybe do something too, versus an appraisal is ordered by the lender. Now, an appraisal is going to be looking at also the integrity of the home to make sure that the bank is lending with a safe transaction. But they will, for like FHA, VA, still be looking at some of the components a home inspector would look at, especially like windows, peeling paint. Again, kind of more so going back to that integrity of the home, making sure that this is a safe investment for this person and the bank that's behind it too as well.
And if you buy in cash, do you still have an appraisal?
No, unless you write it in because you would like one. Some people, I do have a nervous client who has asked if they do, and they do still want an appraisal done. But of course, then your cash offer isn't as clean as a true cash offer.
What is that? And for people that don't know, what does that mean?
So say you're on the selling side, and maybe Andy, this is a good question for him too, but say you're a seller and you're looking at two different offers, one cash, you don't have to worry about the appraisal, you don't have to worry about any lending issues, versus a financed offer, you do still have to go through all those steps. Things could happen, things fall through. So the cash offer is typically a much safer offer, not always, but.
So, I jokingly used to say that it was cash offers for PETA, kind of the pain in the ass, usually because they come in and we're cash, we this, we want that, we want the world. And what reality is this, for most sellers, a finance offer is fine, guys. The banks are good, the loan officers, I'm telling you what, we should have a loan officer on here next, because loan officers right now are working so hard. They don't have all the refi market, they're focusing on their purchase business right now, and you're getting some of the best service I've seen. So they're doing their due diligence, they're getting you through underwriting, they're making sure the appraisers are on time, they're ordering stuff early. Man, I don't know. So cash to me, really in the old days when houses were hard to, like in an environment where houses weren't appraising, cash was very valuable, because you could get, let's say you're trying to sell your house for 200, but it appraises for 175, and somebody offers you 200 in cash, it was a great deal. But usually the person in cash will come offer you 150 because they're cash and they know they can take advantage of the situation. So I generally, when I hear people say, oh, we've got a cash offer, I go, ooh. Usually, but that changes market to market. So,
and getting back to the conversation on home inspections, Davis, what are some of the most common things that you see pop up on home inspection reports?
Well, typically I found several roofs have storm damage, and homeowners don't know, right? So somebody knocks on their door, hey, let me look at your roof. And they're like, no, thank you. Because they're going around bugging, that's what they say, bugging all the people in the neighborhood. And I said, hey, let them in. It doesn't hurt. Have them look at your roof. So we've got a few new roofs for two of my clients because of the home inspection brought to light, hey, there was a storm damage. And then we look up the recent storm history in the area and like, oh, there was a storm 2 months ago. And because, homeowners don't go on the roofs, the home insurance companies typically don't have a problem as long as they can kind of correlate a time frame of recent damage, documented damage, which a home inspection will bring to light, and then get a second opinion. They usually get an appraiser out there, but both times they got new roofs. So that's pretty common in the area to have your roof inspected when you buy a home, I'd recommend at least getting that taken care of, because that can be a big ticket item if you don't have the right type of insurance.
And what do homeowners, or what does the seller do and what does the buyer do typically if they have a laundry list of items that come out of the home inspection report? How does it affect the buying process?
I've been on both sides. Actually, I represented a buyer who had a laundry list. Even though I explained to him, like, look, we're just looking at, safety or big ticket items to negotiate. But of course, this was family and they wanted to ask for every stinking thing. But anyway, I prepared them for that. Hey, you know what? You're probably not going to get anything. And they're like, that's okay. We just feel like it doesn't hurt to ask. So when it comes down to it, it doesn't hurt to ask. But as an agent representing that buyer, you want to definitely let them know that, hey, this is a possibility. What's make or break it for you? Is there a make it or break it ticket item on this list? Because then I'll really go to bat for you for that. As a home inspector, when I'm on the home inspector side, I just try to be neutral, just bring out all the defects, but I also point out what is safety issues and have to put on the report, any kind of fire hazards, old smoke alarms. I typically let the buyers know the age of the HVAC system and also the roof, what kind of shape that's in. And so a lot of times there's still a list to do. There's still some maintenance items that need to be taken care of. And I use inspection software that really, if you use it, it can walk you through every single home maintenance tip that there is.
So
it is funny though, what Davis is talking about. I was cringing as he was saying it. We call that in the industry a honey-do list, right? And the honey-do list on inspections, I'm like, listen, you walked by all that stuff. You saw that the tub needed caulking, or you saw that the door creaked, and to put it on an inspection list is a little redundant because you already made your offer with those things, being aware of those things. Your inspection was to clarify beyond that, so you already made your offer on those items, in my opinion, as a listing agent. So a lot of times I just say, don't hand us a honey-do list. We're not interested. And it's not to be rude. It's to help them understand that, hey, we're not letting you just make a list of things that we need to get done before we move. We want you to make sure you understand what you're buying. Mm-hmm. Different perspective, right?
But you do seem to get quite a comprehensive list of issues and potential issues after the home inspection report comes in.
I will comment. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Davis.
There typically is, hey, this outlet's broken, but it's a $2 item, or there's some paint that needs to be adjusted in the ceilings. There's no white paint that's exactly the same. If you save the same can of white paint, guess what? After a couple of years, it's not the same anymore. So, and you just kind of let people aware and say, hey, I checked it. There's no moisture issue there, and they disclose the past repair. The only way to fix it is paint the whole ceiling, and the seller's not going to do that. So just kind of making people aware to say, what's likely, what's not likely. And market changes, and
Davis,
so do the list.
The disclosure statement, when you look at a house, do you ever take a look at that before you go out to do the inspection?
Oh yeah, I always ask for it. Unfortunately, some agents do not provide it. And I ask for it because I don't want it to be redundant. At least if I find the defect, it's explained. Hey, they disclosed this. It's been taken care of. I checked it again. There's currently no indication of a current problem. Where they don't disclose it, then it can become, it comes to light anyway. So you might as well disclose it up front.
I was curious, do you have things that you notice that somebody's trying to hide something? Like for an example, I always tell people, and this is just my, I call it the parent list, right? There's a couple items that I can go through that are always on mom or dad's list for their kids buying a house, right? That they need to look at. And a lot of times utilities, like we always say, hey, before you sell a house, dust off all your utilities, make them look, even though they're older, shine up that old car. Don't just let it sit there with a patina on it, shine it up a little bit, put a new air filter in it. And so to me, I've had other inspectors that have come back to me and say, nice try on the furnace, putting lipstick on the old whatever, and it's still an old furnace, you know what I mean? What do you see as some of those things? I mean, do you have any of those funny kind of consistent trying to hide it?
I guess the only the only time I've noticed where somebody is not disclosing something is typically with past water damage in a basement. Either it's fresh paint and I could still see that they just paint over, some of the things, or I've had people put stuff in front of certain areas. And so I move stuff. I mean, if it's movable and it's not too much, typically I'll just try to take a peek at any basement services, especially if it looks like they're trying to hide something. But even then, it comes out on the disclosure, and those are things I look for. Just some things are unseeable though. So there's some things where a room is so packed, there's no way I can unload this whole room. And so I do my best guess. If there is a problem there, I kind of weigh what is the odds, what would be the cost if there is a problem. And to me, if there's no structural danger, I'll just note and say, hey, there's stuff in the way. But if I have a suspect that if there is something there and I can't see it, it's going to cost a lot of money, I'd recommend, hey, why don't we come back and take a look at that just to be sure.
So interesting you say that, because I've had over the years where terms of the inspection are defined, and this is usually a little more experience of an agent that works with an experienced inspector like yourself, where they will say, hey, we need all of the walls cleared of boxes. We need the attic scuttle open or ready to be accessed, nothing in its way. Because a lot of times the inspectors won't touch anything. They're not allowed to. So they can't move the box to go up into the attic. So sometimes I think it's strategic when people do put stuff against the walls or, whatever. And then all of a sudden you move everything and they move out and the carpet's trashed or the walls are gross from the pet scratching it or whatever. And so it's not a bad idea, when you have the Abbeys of the world or Davis here writing you an offer, that if you see a lot of that clutter, ask them to have the clutter removed so that you can inspect.
Abby, what are you seeing in terms of inspections for buyers? Because that's really changed a lot over the last 6 months, hasn't it?
Yes, it definitely has. I had quite a few buyers myself waive inspections against my advice, and I typically had them sign a little waiver saying you're going against my advice, but understand why they were doing so. I did have one buyer actually buy a house sight unseen, no inspection. Created a lot of panic. Thankfully, it's gone well so far. So we closed a few months ago, nothing's popped up. So that's been good. But yeah, definitely a lot of waived inspections. We got more strategic and a little bit smarter than on writing offers too for a while of, hey, we're not here to do a honey to-do list. We can't ask for anything unless it's over 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. That way, if there was something major, we could come back and ask. But as a seller, then, if they had 5 offers, they weren't afraid or intimidated to take ours, even though we are still asking for an inspection compared to the others who might not have asked for an inspection. And I think that's really helped. And just explaining that to the seller's agents, understanding, hey, this helps protect your seller too by having this done. So more recently, again, you're still going to have the multiple offers occasionally, but seeing a lot more inspections now, thankfully, which is a lot better feeling, of course.
And what happens if the appraisal comes back and it doesn't meet what you're paying for the house? Does that affect the process of buying the house, or does it not affect buying the house?
It definitely does. And, you can challenge an appraisal to an extent, depending on what it kind of looked like, what kind of comps, was there more recent comps that helps it. But, as a buyer, you typically, you're there for your buyer, you want to get the lower value. But it's a point of renegotiating too, of, are we going to try to meet in the middle? Is the seller going to meet us here at the appraisal price? What does that look like? So there's a lot of different ways in which this scenario could go. A few months ago, last few years, there was a lot of appraisal gap coverages of, sellers wanted to see, let's put your money where your mouth is and do an appraisal gap coverage. If you're going to offer $50,000 over, we'll back it up. Where you were offering $50,000 of a cash deposit essentially to put towards that if there was that gap difference. So I'm not seeing as much of that anymore. I'm not doing it personally for buyers. And Andy, I don't know if you've been seeing it lately on your listings, but thankfully that's dying down, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you got to remember, like, if you list a house, you actually do your due diligence on listing a property. That property is being positioned in the marketplace to actually be at a fair market value. So if you listen, like you walk into a listing as a listing agent, right? And they walk in and say, oh, the builder or the seller wants $1 million for the house. Let's list it at $1 million. And you don't do any due diligence, shame on you. You need to do an appraisal, almost style appraisal on the front end, where you compare foundation sizes, you compare square footages, amenities, updates, lots. What is the view? Is the basement finished, not finished? What kind of driveway do they have? Landscaping. I make all of those adjustments. That's why it takes me sometimes a half a day to do an assessment of a true value. And the reason why I do that is because I want to be able to defend that. So I, as a listing agent, if I list a house for $750 and the appraisal comes in at $725, I usually can say, here's my comps. And they're correct. They're right in the right location, right areas, the right timelines. And I can argue to protect my sellers. On the other hand, there's been times where I'm like, okay, guys, I'm a team player. It's worth $750, but let's list it at $800. And somebody pays $800 and I know better. And I'll just say, hey, this may not appraise. But when we were the environment we just came out of, guys, where it was, you list at $750 and people would offer $8, the buyer would offer $8, not the seller asking for $8, the buyer would offer it. I'd say, put your money where your mouth is, then give us $50,000 non-refundable earnest money. Well, all of a sudden there's all these wells everywhere. And, so it becomes a very interesting, situation for a buyer. Now, as a first-time buyer, here's one of the coolest things about being a first-time buyer. You got so many eyeballs on your file because you're only putting 3.5% or 5% down. Those banks are watching they're watching every move you make to make sure that they don't make a mistake, because they don't want to get that property back either. So if all of a sudden, for some reason, you default on the property, they don't want to be in a bad position or a negative equity position. So they want to make sure that house is on appraised value. The inspections are, everything, has to line up perfectly. So it's kind of cool when you put a little less down, because I think you're safer as a buyer because you have so many extra eyeballs watching you, versus if you're putting 20 or 30% down. I've seen banks waive appraisals because they really don't care, because they know that you're giving, such a deposit that they're like, I'm sure it's worth that. Sure.
Well, oh, go ahead, Abby.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I've had a lot of buyers, even still recently, have appraisal waivers just because they have 20, 25, 30% down. And a lot of them have like a system, they just plug the address in, it comes out clean. They're like, okay, yep, we'll waive it.
Well, I mean, this has been great, you guys. This is great information. I think you've all shared some really great nuggets with the listeners on the process of the home inspection and the process of the appraisal and what that actually means to buying a home. I thank each of you for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
I got one last. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I just have one more tip, because I love to see the buyers on our buyers reps do this frequently now. They're asking for closing costs for our buyers. Our buyers are getting closing costs paid again from the sellers, where that means you can come to closing with less money as a buyer, and the sellers are happy to help you out. It's a real cool environment right now to buy a house. And with that happening, you can surprisingly buy a house with less money down, keeping more money in reserve. So if you ever have a rainy day, you got plenty to cover and you're in good shape. And remember, Abby and I always say this, and I'm sure Davis does too. You buy the house, you marry the house, you date the rate. And so with rates jumping around, don't worry about it. Get a rate that you're comfortable with right now. You can always refinance later, but make sure you pick the right house. Okay. All right. Sorry.
So, no, you're all good. I think again, the message is work with a team that understands every aspect of the process and has a collaborative nature that brings a lot of different ideas to the table to help you be creative in how you find and buy and or sell the property that you want. So all of these guys' contact information is below the video. You can also download our buyer book via the link below, and we will see you next time.